money and distribution, is there anything that the creators can do you think, to bring in younger and newer readers that they're maybe not doing now? Like, or maybe as a policy, like, can Marvel and DC change anything about the, policy about the kind of stories they produce? Do you think can bring in new readers?
The problem that we have now, as I see it anyway, is that our core audience now is 20s and 30s and 40s, 50s, older, and that's the audience that will go into a comic book store and follow a book, and and that audience wants more mature material, and that stuff is what is most successful. So it's in the publisher's interest to put out mostly what's most successful on the market. And we haven't, how many times, like, Marvel has done the
Adventures of...
Right, yeah, and DC has the same kind of a thing, and it's all geared towards younger readers with simple stories that would, start at the beginning of an issue and end at the end of an issue, so you don't have to buy multiple issues, and, lighter themes. And we do that kind of material, but the problem is it just goes on the rack in a comic store right alongside something that's more mature, and since 9 out of 10 customers want something that's more mature, that's what they'll pick up, and the stuff just dies on the vine, and we can't sell it. And it sells, but it doesn't actually bring in new readers, and the problem is that it's just not put in a place where it can. I mean, it would be great if we, through a library, we could get comics into schools. And that would be something. Or with Disney now, if we could get comics into Disney stores, maybe not some of the more mature stuff, but stuff that's a little more geared towards kids, and it could really balloon because of that. I know Walmart, generally, that they don't carry things that are controversial, so with Disney, maybe we can start getting some of that stuff in front of kids that way. But I know that it's something that we've been talking about for years, my whole career, and nobody's actually really been successful. I know if you go online, everybody talks about how comic books are too expensive, and you hear that all the time. It's too expensive, and that's why people don't buy enough comic books. But any publisher that's ever tried to actually put out a book that's less expensive on cheaper paper, that kind of thing, and keep costs down, people don't buy the comic book because they see it as a discounted item, and they want the real deal, and it's just... I don't know how you get around those kind of things. I know smarter people than me have been trying for a long time.
Yeah, the price is reflective of the quality of the work that's going into them now, and the quality of the inks and the quality of the paper. So people have just grown accustomed to having high gloss, high-end Baxter paper with extremely clean white line or perfect black lines on perfect, pristine white paper. So to throw it back and cut your production costs down, that would enable you to actually bring the cost back down to a 75-cent or $1 book. It's just as you said, people don't want it because they've seen what they can have. So they want that for this price.
It's just not.
I think just its Bone series has managed to cross that line.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, one of the things with Bone that happened that really made a difference in terms of distribution and getting it to kids is Scholastic books.
It's Scholastic books.
In the States. Well, that immediately gives you access to every school style there is when Scholastic picks it up. It's that kind of distribution channel.
Because they give a 40% discount.
To get it into kids' hands. There's some other efforts. Art Spiegelman and Francois Moulet doing Toon books right now. Those are comics designed specifically for kids. In the sort of mold of children's literature, but they're graphic narratives.
Yeah. And it's great that stuff is actually finally kind of starting to break through. I mean, in Europe, comics, you don't really see superhero comics. Yeah, Asterix is huge there. Comics are in bookstores. You walk in and your frontal display would be a nice hardbound graphic novel, and it's much more mainstream there. And it covers so much ground. I think the problem with American comics is, in the 50s, there were romance comics and horror comics and all these different types of comics, and I don't want to get into the specifics, but U.S. government decided to heavily edit comic books and what they were able. Right, there was a lot of censorship, and they instituted the Comics Code Authority and made it almost impossible to publish anything that wasn't just light, fluffy. So superheroes kind of came back and filled the void that was left by EC and the horror comics. And ever since then, because comics were not allowed really to cover any, more, I guess, challenging material. They were seen more as a kid's thing, and you know, I think that's changing now. Especially, you know, I wasn't thinking about Bone, but yeah, I bought it at a bookstore, and it's got a prominent display. It seems like we are kind of starting to bridge that a little bit.
The problem is that out of the 10 most censored books, requested censored books, Bone was number 3. So there's still that challenge. I mean, you're still, any kind of visual narrative is still getting challenged in the North American market, and it's only up to other parents who are willing to say, I'm okay with this, or I think this is great. My son or daughter, who does not normally like reading books, is going to read this. So if you, as a prominent graphic novelist, and I'm just going to say this, is willing to say, I'm willing to do Spawn, I'm willing to do this to your boss, but I'm also willing to take on a child's book and do a great children's book, and I'm willing to cut my costs, because that's the problem. To do a library-bound material, like I was saying, that's the thing. That's where the cost comes. It's about the publishing. You're saying you're making lots of money, but we're saying on the other end, there's another market saying there isn't. I know that we have to wrap this up because it's getting towards...
yeah, I was actually just going to ask if anybody else
has any more questions.
And then I was going to ask Dave if you could tell us what you're going to be working on in the future, or what you're working on now. And Tony, I know we already talked about it, but I also wanted to ask you about the Conduit, if you're ever going to release that.
Yes, what I'm doing with the Conduit is every 3-4 months, when I have enough material to actually reformat it and put it into a comic book format, it'll be released. The Windsor Star is going to be helping out with that, and as a result of me saving printing costs, half of the money of the sale of every one of the books will be going to Raise a Reader, which is, I think it's a little icon of most of the Conduit's material. So again, it's another one of those things where a charity is going to benefit from it, and it'll help me go to heaven. So that should, you know. So buy a lot of copies. And if, you know, as it gets closer to the time that it will be released, every Saturday in the black and white comic, it's like a letters thing. I'll be posting in there or writing in there when the book will be available and how to get it.
And I'd just like to point out that this guy right here was the first person to help the Windsor Public Library basically publicly announce that we were getting graphic novels in our system.
That's more of the heaven stuff.
So that's part of it.